Welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of recording my essay, Discuss Whether Value is a Higher Virtue Than Knowledge. So I'll go to our page. So the problem of corrupt and mistaken values. The priority of value faces an immediate objection. People can possess strong values that are mistaken, irrational, or evil. A fanatic may subordinate every intellectual consideration to an unquestionable political or religious commitment. If value is regarded as categorically superior to knowledge, evidence can always be rejected whenever it conflicts with the agent's preferred ideals. This would legitimize dogmatism rather than virtue. The objection demonstrates why subjective commitment cannot constitute the relevant higher virtue. Valuing is not sufficient. The agent must value what is genuinely worthy and must do so for defensible reasons. This requirement introduces an epistemic dimension into virtue. To judge that justice, dignity, or welfare is valuable requires some understanding of persons, institutions, consequences and the grounds of moral claims. A value incapable of surviving rational scrutiny is not made virtuous by the intensity with which it is held. There's also a danger of circularity. If genuine value is defined as whatever a virtuous person values, while a virtuous person excuse me, is defined as someone who correctly recognizes value, the account provides no independent means of distinguishing good valuation from prejudice. Knowledge, critical reflection, and openness to evidence are necessary to interrupt the circle. They permit agents to revise moral commitments in light of reasons that are not reducible to their existing preferences. The superiority of value, therefore, cannot mean that factual evidence should be subordinated whenever it becomes inconvenient. Rather, moral valuation should govern the purposes of inquiry, while epistemic virtue governs the formation of beliefs. Ethical responsibility may determine which questions deserve attention, but it cannot determine in advance which factual answers must be accepted. So practical wisdom as an integration of value and knowledge. Aristotle's account of practical wisdom provides a more adequate resolution than either the simple supremacy of value or the simple supremacy of knowledge. Aristotle states that moral virtue makes the goal correct, while practical wisdom identifies what contributes to that goal. Virtue without practical wisdom is ineffective or misguided, while practical wisdom cannot be fully virtuous when it serves corrupt ends. This relationship is more intimate than a division in which value mechanically selects an end and knowledge subsequently calculates the means. Practical wisdom involves perceiving what features of a situation are morally salient, judging how general considerations apply to particular circumstances, and responding through appropriate action. These are simultaneously epistemic and evaluative achievements. The practically wise person must understand both what is happening and why particular considerations matter. Contemporary virtue epistemology similarly challenges a rigid separation between knowledge and moral character. It evaluates knowers partly through traits such as intellectual honesty, conscientiousness, courage, humility, and responsibility. Some intellectual virtues promote the agent's own knowledge, while others, including honesty and integrity, enable the epistemic flourishing of other people. Knowledge is therefore not merely an accumulation of correct propositions. It can be understood as an achievement arising from responsible intellectual agency. This approach also explains why understanding may sometimes be more valuable than isolated knowledge. Van Wyk argues that the distinctive epistemic value traditionally attributed to knowledge may be better located in understanding. The systematic grasp of explanatory relationships among facts. Someone may know many disconnected propositions without comprehending their significance. Similarly, an individual may profess morally admirable values without understanding their implications. Wisdom requires an integrated grasp in which knowledge is organized by worthwhile purposes and values are disciplined by rational understanding. The alleged hierarchy should therefore be reformulated. Bare knowledge is subordinate to wise valuation because it cannot determine its own proper use. Yet wise valuation is not independent of knowledge because responsible judgment must be responsive to truth. The highest virtue is not value alone, but the practical wisdom through which the true and the good become mutually informing. So an objection: knowledge is itself a value. A further objection maintains that the proposed hierarchy is artificial because knowledge is itself valuable. To rank value above knowledge would be analogous to ranking value above one particular value. Knowledge may be instrumentally valuable, intrinsically worthwhile, and constitutive of human flourishing. If so, it does not stand outside the sphere of value awaiting moral direction. This objection is correct but does not eliminate the relevant distinction. To say that knowledge is valuable does not imply that every acquisition or application of knowledge is equally worthwhile. Knowledge of how to manipulate vulnerable persons may be genuine knowledge, yet its pursuit and use can be morally objectionable. Epistemic value is one dimension of value, rather than the sole dimension of which conduct should be assessed. There may also be conflicts between epistemic and moral goods. Acquiring certain knowledge may require intrusive experimentation, violations of privacy, or the exposure of individuals to unreasonable risk. An unrestricted commitment to knowledge would struggle to explain why some methods of inquiry are impermissible. Moral value constrains epistemic pursuit by establishing that persons cannot legitimately be treated merely as informational resources. Nevertheless, moral evaluation should not license indifference to truth. A comforting falsehood does not become knowledge because it supports a socially desirable outcome. Nor can political and moral authorities legitimately redefine evidence according to preferred values. The correct conclusion is therefore pluralistic. Knowledge has genuine value, but its value exists alongside and sometimes beneath moral considerations concerning how knowledge is acquired and used. So the conclusion to this essay is as follows. Taken literally, the claim that value is a higher virtue than knowledge is a category mistake. Value is not ordinarily a virtue, and knowledge is not necessarily a stable excellence of character. Reconstructed as a comparison between appropriate orientation towards the good and intellectual attainment, however, the claim is substantially defensible. Value is higher in the architectonic sense because it governs ends. Knowledge provides truth, explanation, and effective means, but it cannot independently determine whether the purposes it serves are justifiable. Plato's subordination of knowledge to the good and Kant's subordination of intellectual talents to the goodwill both capture this insight. Knowledge without moral orientation may increase the competence of an unjust agent rather than make that agent good. Yet value cannot be treated as superior in a manner that permits it to disregard knowledge. Uninformed valuation easily becomes sentimentality, prejudice, or fanaticism. Genuine moral virtue must remain responsive to facts, reasons, and critical scrutiny. Aristotle's practical wisdom therefore offers the strongest resolution. Moral virtue directs the agent towards worthy ends, while sound judgment enables those ends to be understood and realized. Value is consequently higher than bare knowledge, but it is not higher than knowledge properly integrated into wisdom. The morally excellent person must not only care about what is good, but also understand the world in which the good is to be pursued. Conversely, the knowledgeable person must possess sufficient moral virtue to ensure that understanding serves rather than undermines human flourishing. The highest virtue is thus neither valuing nor knowing in isolation, but knowing what is worth valuing and acting upon that knowledge wisely. So as you can see, there's a reference here. So we've got Plato, Zagzebski, apologies if I mispronounced that. Van Vig, again, apologies if I mispronounced that. Aristotle, with Nicomachean Ethics. Plato's Republic, Kant, Groundwork of Metaphysics and Morals. And lastly, Turi et al., which is based on virtue epistemology. So thank you very much for listening and reading with me if you had the chance. If you like this, give it a like or a comment, and I will upload more essays very soon. Thank you very much. Have a good day.